The hinge on Thomas Venn's pocket watch broke in the middle of Elara's testimony. She heard the tiny snap beneath her thumb. For 18 years, the silver watch had opened only one way. Its familiar face showed black Roman numerals, a motionless second hand, and a faint scratch Thomas had made while repairing a field lantern. Elara knew every mark because she was an inheritance claims examiner, and because grief had taught her to inventory what death left behind. But now the back cover shifted twice. A second plate rose beneath it. Elara stared at the dark red impression stamped into the hidden silver. Across the Winter Claims Assembly, the Alpha King stood so quickly that his chair struck the stone behind him. His enormous white wolf rose beside the throne. A low growl moved through the chamber, not at Elara, at the king. The mark inside the watch was unmistakable, a circle divided by 3 claw lines, surrounded by the old words of sovereign authority. King Ronan Thorne's blood seal. Beneath it, someone had etched 27 numbers into the silver. Elara looked from the seal to the man who had ruled the Northern Pax for 34 years. "Why," she asked, "was your signature hidden inside my dead husband's watch?" No one answered. The Winter Claims Assembly had been built for voices to carry. The ceiling rose 4 stories above black walnut benches. Every whisper usually found its way into the galleries. Now the only sound was the white wolf's warning. King Ronan stepped down from the raised platform. He was 56, broad through the shoulders, with iron-gray hair brushed back from a composed face. The public knew him as the ruler who had ended the border fighting and rebuilt 3 burned towns without raising winter taxes. His portraits made him appear severe. In person, he looked tired. That did not make him harmless. "Do not close it," he said. Elara's fingers remained on the watch. "I had no intention of doing so." Chancellor Merrick Vale leaned toward the king. He was a narrow man in a dark green coat, old enough for his silver hair to appear dignified rather than fragile. "Your Majesty, that object must be secured." Elara turned her gaze on him. "It is already secure. It contains a royal blood seal. It also belongs to me." Merrick's expression did not change. "No private citizen may retain an unregistered sovereign instrument. I am not presenting it as a private citizen. I am presenting it as evidence in an active inheritance claim." Several people in the gallery shifted. Elara knew what they saw. A 52-year-old wolfless widow in a plain navy dress, standing alone at the petitioner's table, with a dead man's watch in her hand. She also knew what she was. A licensed examiner who had spent 27 years studying fraudulent transfers, disputed military pensions, missing probate records, and the quiet ways institutions stole from people who lacked the strength to fight back. Ronan stopped 6 feet from her. His eyes were gray, though not as pale as his wolf's. "May I examine it?" The request surprised her more than a command would have. "No." Merrick made a sharp sound. "Lady Venn." "Elara Venn," she corrected. "And before anyone touches this watch, the clerk will record its present condition, every visible mark, and every person within reach of this table." The king looked toward the court recorder. "Do it." Merrick turned to him. "Your Majesty, the seal itself establishes royal custody." "No," Ronan said. "It establishes royal interest. Mrs. Venn has requested proper evidence procedure." Elara noticed the distinction. She did not mistake it for trust. The court recorder approached with ink, paper, and a magnifying lens. His hands shook as he described the broken hinge, the hidden plate, the blood seal, and the engraved numbers. Orel, the royal wolf, descended from the dais. He moved without hurry. His coat was white, except for silver around his muzzle, and his head reached almost to Elara's shoulder. Courtiers drew their feet beneath their benches as he passed. Elara did not move. Orel stopped beside the petitioner's table and lowered his nose toward the open watch. His breath stirred the loose chain. Then he closed his eyes. The reaction was so quiet that only Elara and Ronan seemed to understand its significance. Ronan spoke first. "He recognizes something." "Your seal?" Elara asked. Ronan's attention remained on the wolf. Perhaps. Oral opened his eyes and looked directly at Elara. There was no threat in him. There was recognition. The thought made her skin tighten beneath her sleeves. Thomas had served as a civilian medical officer during the final border emergency. He had worked in remote field stations and treated soldiers from both sides. He had never mentioned the royal wolf. He had also never mentioned carrying a secret plate stamped with the king's blood. The recorder began reading the engraved numbers aloud. 741, 748, 762. A woman in the second gallery stood abruptly. She was perhaps 60, with close-cropped white hair and both hands pressed against the bench before her. That is my claim number. Merrick turned toward her. Sit down. The woman did not. That number was assigned to my husband's estate 19 years ago. The court declared the file closed because I was dead. A murmur spread across the chamber. Elara looked at the woman. Your name? Mara Holt. The name struck a distant memory. Thomas had written it once in the margin of an old expense book. No explanation, only the words, Ask Mara if the winter road closes. Merrick raised his voice. This hearing concerns the Venn estate. It will not become a forum for unrelated accusations. They are not unrelated, Elara said. She moved her finger down the inner plate without touching the engravings. 27 claim numbers. 27 widows, perhaps. Or 27 graves. Ronan's gaze followed the numbers. His face had become still in the practiced way of powerful men who had realized other people were watching for fear. Seal the chamber, he ordered. The heavy doors closed at once. The Elara heard the iron bars slide into place. Her stomach tightened. 18 years earlier, royal officers had closed a smaller room before informing her that Thomas's death had been reviewed. His testimony had been discredited, and her home would remain under crown protection until the emergency ended. The emergency had ended 17 years ago. Her home had never been returned. If stories about courage, second chances, and earned love speak to you, please subscribe and join us for the next chapter. Ronan looked toward the galleries. No one leaves until every number is copied and every claimant is identified. Merrick leaned closer. A closed chamber will invite speculation. So will a dead woman standing before us, Ronan replied. Mara Holt remained upright. I am not dead, Your Majesty. No, Ronan said, you are not. There was something in his tone Elara could not place. Shame, perhaps, or calculation. She had learned not to confuse the two. The recorder copied the remaining numbers. 3 more women stood before he finished. One had lost a fishing property on the northern coast. Another had lost a military pension. The third said her family farm had been transferred into a trust she had never signed. Merrick called them mistaken. Elara asked each woman for the year, district, and issuing office. The pattern formed before anyone else in the chamber recognized it. All 27 claims had been opened during the same 18-month border emergency. All had been assigned to the Crown Preservation Council. All had disappeared from ordinary probate review. Elara faced Ronan. Who controlled the council? Merrick answered for him. It operated under temporary sovereign authority. That was not my question. Ronan held her gaze. I did. The words did not sound defensive. That made them worse. Elara closed the watch carefully, leaving the hidden plate exposed. My husband died while investigating this council. Merrick's mouth flattened. Your husband died of fever after being detained for falsifying military records. Thomas had no fever when they took him. You were not present at his death. No, the Crown denied me access. Ronan's eyes shifted briefly toward Merrick. Elara saw it. Not surprise. Recognition. A clerk approached the petitioner's table with a padded evidence box. Mrs. Venn, Ronan said, I need the watch. You need access to it. That is different. The blood seal may reveal information dangerous to the realm. The realm has been safe for 18 years. The widows have not. Oriel moved closer until his shoulder touched the side of Elara's skirt. Several guards reached for their weapons. Ronan lifted one hand, stopping them. The wolf remained beside her. The balance in the room changed. Elara looked down at Oriel, then at the king. Your own wolf appears to understand my position. For the first time, something almost human crossed Ronan's face. Not anger, pain. He has disagreed with me before. Publicly? No. Merrick stepped forward. This has gone far enough. He reached toward the evidence box. Elara covered the watch with her palm. Ronan's voice cut through the space between them. Chancellor, step back. Merrick obeyed, but his eyes stayed on the watch. That was when Elara saw it. He knew the numbers. He had not studied them like a man encountering forgotten records. He had watched their exposure like a man counting losses. A junior clerk moved behind the recorder's desk. His sleeve brushed the copied list. Then his hand closed around it. Elara pointed. Stop him. The clerk ran. He reached the side aisle before Oriel moved. The wolf crossed the distance in 3 silent bounds and struck the man behind the knees without using his teeth. The clerk hit the stone. The copied list slid from his hand. A guard pinned him before he could rise. Merrick stared at the fallen clerk. I have never seen that man before. Elara walked to the list and lifted it by one corner. He wears your counsel's green thread beneath his cuff. Every clerk assigned to the Crown Preservation Council used green stitching inside the right sleeve. Most people never noticed it. Elara noticed such things for a living. Ronan examined the thread. Take him to a holding room. No questioning until Mrs. Venn and an independent witness are present. Merrick's composure thinned. You would allow a claimant to supervise a royal interrogation? I would allow the examiner who identified him to protect the integrity of her evidence. Elara met Ronan's eyes. That was the first thing he had done which cost him something in front of his own court. It was not enough. But it was not nothing. Mara Holt came down from the gallery after the doors reopened. She approached Elara slowly, as though uncertain she was permitted to stand beside her. Thomas knew me, she said. Elara kept her voice steady. How? I was a field nurse at the Eastern Station. The night before they arrested him, he gave me that watch. Elara's hand tightened around the chain. The Crown returned it with his effects. Because I put it there. Mara glanced toward Merrick, then lowered her voice. Thomas told me that if he did not return by dawn, I was to seal the watch inside his medical case. He said no royal searcher would examine a dead man's ordinary belongings twice. Why did you never tell me? I tried. Your letters were returned. Then your claim was marked closed, and I was declared dead in the same month. Elara felt the old injury open without drama. No sudden tears. No trembling. Only the clean recognition that someone had spent years ensuring 2 women never reached each other. Ronan had followed them from the table, though he remained at a respectful distance. Mara looked at him and went pale. You were there, she whispered. Ronan's expression changed. At the Eastern Station? When the white wolf was wounded, Mara pointed toward Oriel. Thomas treated him. He stayed awake through 2 nights because the royal surgeons said the leg should be taken. Oriel pressed his nose against the watch again. Thomas's scent could not have survived 18 years. But perhaps memory did not require scent. Ronan looked at Elara. Your husband saved Oriel's life, and afterward your government destroyed his name. He accepted the sentence without protest. Merrick approached with 2 guards behind him. The court must move into private review. These allegations involve wartime security, succession records, and sovereign instruments. Elara turned to the galleries. The widows were watching, some frightened, some hopeful, all accustomed to rooms closing before decisions were made about their lives. She understood what Ronan was about to do before he spoke. I am ordering a private evidentiary session, he said. No. His gaze returned to her. Elara, there may be names on that plate connected to current officers. You do not have permission to use my name as though we are allies. A small pause followed. "Mrs. Venn," he corrected. "I cannot protect the witnesses if their identities are announced before we know who inside the court is involved. And I cannot protect them by allowing the Crown to bury another record." Ronan looked toward the woman from the coastal district, then toward Mara. "What do you propose?" Elara climbed the 2 steps to the recorder's platform. She placed the copied list beneath the reading lamp. Then she read every number aloud. Merrick tried to interrupt after the 5th. Ronan stopped him. By the 27th, 7 people in the galleries were crying. Elara did not raise her voice. She did not need to. "These numbers are now part of the public assembly record," she said. "No private order can make them disappear again." Ronan studied her for a long moment. "You understood exactly what that would cost." "Yes. It may expose your husband's actions as well as mine. If Thomas harmed these women, I will not protect his memory at their expense." Mara reached across the recorder's table and placed her hand beside Elara's, not touching, simply present. Ronan looked at the 2 women. Then he turned toward Merrick. "Open the lower record vault." The Chancellor went rigid. "That archive was sealed by your father." "I am aware. The documents inside are protected by succession law." Ronan removed a black iron key from beneath his coat. "Today they are protected by evidence law." The lower vault lay beneath the court, beyond a stairway narrow enough for 1 person at a time. Ronan descended first, followed by Elara, Mara, and Oral. Merrick was ordered to remain above with the detained clerk. The air changed as they went down. It smelled of stone, dry paper, and old metal. At the bottom, Ronan unlocked a door with 3 separate bolts. Rows of green ledgers filled the room. Elara entered without waiting for invitation. She found the emergency decree within 12 minutes. The first page bore Ronan's signature. The second page contained the temporary trust language. The third page used different ink. Elara held it beneath the lamp. The paper fibers run in the opposite direction. Ronan moved beside her but did not reach for the document. "What does that mean?" "This page was cut from another sheet and bound into the decree later." She showed him the ink under magnification. The permanent confiscation clause had been written months after the signature page. Ronan read the words once. His hand closed around the edge of the table. Elara turned another page. An annex had been removed. The narrow strip remaining in the binding carried part of a map grid. Oral came forward, sniffed the torn paper, and walked past the shelves toward the rear wall. "Where does that lead?" Elara asked. "It does not," Ronan said. "The passage behind that wall was sealed before Thomas entered royal service." Oral placed 1 paw against the lowest stone. A hollow sound answered. Elara removed the watch from her pocket and opened the hidden plate again. The final engraving was not a claim number. It was a coordinate. She read it twice, then looked at the king. "It points beneath the frozen lake." Ronan's face had lost all color. Elara held the watch between them. "You recognize the mark?" He said nothing. She stepped closer. "How did my husband obtain a blood-sealed device built to hide royal evidence?" Ronan looked at the concealed plate, at Orel, waiting beside the false wall, and finally at Elara. "Because I had those watches made," he said. "And your husband was never supposed to receive one." Elara did not lower the watch. "Then tell me who was." Ronan turned toward the false wall. The devices were commissioned during the final year of the border emergency. 5 were made. Each carried a blood seal and a concealed map plate. They were intended for royal witnesses who might need to move evidence without trusting the ordinary courier system. Who received them? My war secretary, 2 field commanders, the royal physician. His gaze returned to the watch, and me. Thomas was none of those men. No. Yet he died carrying one. Ronan crossed to the stone Oral had marked. He pressed his palm against it, then bent and found a narrow iron catch hidden near the floor. The wall opened inward by less than an inch. Cold air moved through the gap. Mara stepped back. "That passage leads under the lake?" "It once led to the military lodge on the eastern shore," Ronan said. My father sealed it after the emergency. Elara watched him pull the stone door wider. You knew this passage existed. I knew it had existed. That is not the same answer. Ronan faced her fully. No, it is not. The admission did not soften her. It made her listen more carefully. Aurel entered the passage first. Ronan reached for a lantern from the vault wall. Before he lit it, he looked at Elara. The floor may be unstable. I can judge where I place my feet. I know. He offered her the second lantern instead of his hand. That small correction mattered. Not enough to become trust, enough to be noticed. The tunnel was narrow and colder than the archive. Frost silvered the mortar between the stones. Their footsteps echoed beneath the frozen lake, steady and close. Aurel moved several yards ahead, stopping whenever the passage divided. Each time, he chose the eastern branch without hesitation. Mara walked behind Elara. Thomas used to speak about a white wolf, she said quietly. I thought he meant a military emblem. What did he say? That the white one remembered what men chose to forget. Ronan heard her. He did not turn around. After 20 minutes, the passage rose toward a wooden hatch. Ronan pushed it open, and a drift of old snow collapsed across his shoulders. Beyond it stood a decommissioned military lodge. The roof sagged at one corner. Frost covered the windows from inside. A black iron stove occupied the center of the main room, surrounded by overturned chairs and rotting cots. Elara stepped around Ronan and examined the floor. No recent footprints. Not through the door, Mara said. Aurel crossed directly to the fireplace. He pressed his shoulder against the stone surround, then scratched once at the lowest brick. Elara crouched beside him. The mortar around that brick was newer than the rest. She took a narrow tool from her examiner's case and worked it into the seam. The brick slid forward. Behind it was a brass lever. Ronan looked at the mechanism. Thomas could not have built this alone. He did not need to, Elara said. He only needed to know where an older mechanism had been concealed. She pulled the lever. A section of the fireplace turned inward. The hidden room beyond smelled of paper, ash, and cedar oil. Shelves lined 3 walls. Dark green ledgers sat in careful rows. Canvas bundles were stacked beneath them, each labeled with an estate number. 27 estate numbers. Mara covered her mouth. Elara entered first. No one stopped her. She moved from bundle to bundle, checking seals, dates, stitching, and clerk marks. The records were old, but they had been preserved properly. Whoever hid them understood evidence. On the central table lay a ledger, bound in cracked black leather. Thomas's initials were written inside the cover. TV. Elara touched them with one finger. For 18 years, she had protected the memory of a man whose final weeks had been reduced to 3 official sentences. Detained for falsification. Stricken by fever. Buried under wartime necessity. Now his handwriting filled more than 200 pages. She began reading. The original trust had been designed to protect military families during evacuation. The states were to be held for no more than 12 months. Widows were to retain title. Pensions were to continue. No transfer could become permanent without civilian review. Thomas had helped draft those rules. He had also helped create the coded claim system hidden inside the watch. Elara turned another page. The notes changed halfway through the ledger. Early entries were neat and procedural. Later ones crowded the margins. Permanent transfer language inserted after signature. Claimants declared unreachable despite verified addresses. Pension accounts redirected to preservation estates. 3 witnesses removed from service. Elara stopped at the final phrase. Removed from service. Not dismissed. Removed. Ronan read over her shoulder without touching the page. Thomas discovered the alterations. He helped build the system first. Yes. Mara looked at Elara. He thought it would protect us. So did every person who creates authority and assumes no one will misuse it. Her words landed between her and Ronan. He accepted them. Elara found a folded sheet inside the back cover. It was not addressed to her. That hurt more than she expected. The first line read, "If this ledger is found, do not make me innocent." She sat down. Thomas's confession was brief. He admitted that he had helped design the emergency trust. He admitted that he had ignored early complaints because he believed temporary disorder was unavoidable. By the time he understood the transfers were deliberate, 3 widows had already been displaced. He had tried to stop the system from inside. He had failed. Then he had begun copying everything. Mara turned away to give Elara privacy. Ronan remained where he was. Elara read the last paragraph aloud, because the truth belonged to more than her. "Tell Elara I loved her. Tell her I also lied to her. I told myself silence kept her safe. It only made her unprepared. If she finds this, she must decide what to do with my name. She must not protect it at the cost of the women I failed." The lodge seemed smaller after that. Elara folded the page along its old crease. For years, she had fought to clear Thomas's name. Now he had asked her not to. Ronan spoke carefully. "You do not have to decide today." "Yes, I do." He studied her face. "The public record will use this against him. It should. And against you." "I know." Mara turned back. Elara placed Thomas's confession on top of the ledger. "We release all of it." Mara's eyes filled. Some of the widows may think he betrayed them. He did betray them. Then he tried to repair the damage. Both are true. Ronan looked at the confession. "You would give the court evidence that weakens your own claim." "I would give the court the whole record." He lowered his gaze. For the first time, Elara understood that truth frightened him most, when it could not be arranged into innocence and guilt. Thomas had done harm, and then chosen courage. Ronan had done something else. A loose sheet protruded from the ledger's inner pocket. Elara pulled it free. It was a copy of a royal review notice, dated 12 years earlier. The recipient line bore Ronan's private office seal. The first sentence was underlined twice. "Evidence indicates the Crown Preservation Council has exceeded the limits of the emergency decree." Elara read the date again. 12 years. 6 years after Thomas died. She looked at Ronan. "You were warned." His face changed, but he did not deny it. Mara stepped between the table and the door as if she feared he might leave. "What did you do?" Elara asked. Ronan looked toward the frozen window. "I ordered a confidential review." "Where is it?" "Sealed." "Why?" The succession council was divided. 3 major houses had acquired preservation estates. If I had opened the decree publicly, they would have challenged the throne while the southern packs were still armed. How many claims were taken after this notice? I do not know. You chose not to know. His eyes returned to hers. Yes. The honesty struck cleanly. No excuse. No denial. Still not enough. Elara placed the notice beside Thomas's confession. "You do not get to call this Merrick's crime alone." "I will not. Not here. Not privately. Before every widow. I understand." "No." Her voice remained low. "You understand words. Those women understand winters without homes." Aurel lifted his head sharply. A smell reached Elara a moment later. Smoke. Not from the dead stove. From beneath the floorboards. Ronan moved toward the hidden entrance. Someone sealed the outer chimney. A dark line of smoke slipped through the wall behind the ledgers. Mara grabbed the nearest canvas bundle. Elara closed the black ledger and lifted it against her chest. Ronan pulled at the fireplace mechanism. It did not move. "Jammed from the tunnel side," he said. Aurel began clawing at the lodge's main door. The old wood shuddered but held. Elara scanned the room. The windows were narrow, reinforced with rusted bars. The rear wall had already begun to warm. Ronan stripped off his coat and wrapped it around his forearm. "Take the records to the front room. I will open the door." "You will not carry me," Elara said. His gaze cut toward her. "I was not going to." "Good." She turned to Mara. "Take the confession and review notice." Leave every duplicate. They moved fast. The smoke thickened near the ceiling. A shelf cracked. One of the upper ledgers fell into the heat gathering along the wall. Ronan caught it before it landed in the flames. He shoved it into Elara's canvas evidence bag. The main door would not open. Someone had driven an iron spike through the outside latch. Ronan braced one shoulder against the frame. The first strike loosened nothing. The second split the wood near the hinge. On the third, part of the ceiling gave way behind them. A beam crashed across the hidden room entrance. Flames climbed the dry shelving. Elara ran back. Ronan caught her wrist, then released it immediately. The victim ledger is already out. The transfer index is not. Where? Under the center table. I will get it. No, you do not know which volume. He looked at the fire, then at her. What do you need? Hold the beam for 10 seconds. He did not argue. Ronan crossed to the fallen timber and lifted one end high enough for Elara to crawl beneath. Heat pressed against her face. She found the thin red index beneath the table and pulled it free. The beam shifted. Now, Elara. She backed out. Ronan let the timber fall as soon as her boots cleared it. Oriel struck the main door again. This time the lower hinge broke. Ronan drove his shoulder through the gap, widening it until cold air rushed inside. Mara went first with the documents. Elara followed with the black ledger and transfer index. Ronan came out last. They stumbled into the snow as the eastern wall ignited behind them. Elara dropped to one knee, coughing. Ronan stopped several feet away. May I check your hands? She looked at him. He was bleeding through his shirt, where the broken door had cut his shoulder. Soot marked one side of his face. He did not touch her. Yes. He crouched and turned her palms upward carefully. A small burn reddened 2 fingers. Nothing worse. His thumb paused near her wrist, then withdrew. Mara called from beside the lodge. Oriel found something. The wolf stood near the chimney with a burned leather glove between his teeth. A green embroidered line remained visible at the cuff. Merrick's council thread. Inside the glove, protected beneath the folded leather, was a silver family seal. Vale. Ronan took one look at it. We return to the court now. Elara rose. With the original records under independent guard. Yes. Mara chooses the guards. Yes. And I keep the watch. His answer came without delay. Yes. They returned through the surface road because smoke had filled the tunnel. By the time they reached the winter court, the blizzard had begun. Mara selected 4 town constables with no royal appointment. Elara recorded every document transferred into their custody. Ronan opened his private correspondence archive to her before sunset. No restrictions. No missing years. He placed the key on the table and stepped back. Elara spent 3 hours finding what he had not wanted anyone to see. Review orders. Delays. Warnings. A handwritten note from Merrick arguing that reopening the widow claims would expose weaknesses in the succession. And Ronan's reply, postpone until stability is assured. There was no date for stability, only postponement. Near midnight, Elara found him in the small archive kitchen, attempting to make tea with one bandaged shoulder. You should have that stitched. It has been. Poorly. It was done by a king's physician. They are trained to flatter wounds. She almost smiled. Almost. He handed her the cup without stepping close. The cast iron stove clicked softly between them. My mother died during a succession riot, he said. A private letter was released. Half of it was true. The other half was altered. By the time anyone proved the difference, 23 people were dead. Elara warmed her hands around the cup. So you decided buried truth was safer. I decided controlled truth was safer. And when control became silence, I told myself I needed more time. She looked at the gray in his hair, the exhaustion beneath his eyes, and the authority he wore even in a kitchen. Time belongs differently to rulers, she said. You postpone for a year. A widow loses another winter. I know that now. You knew enough 12 years ago. He did not defend himself. That made the quiet harder. Ronan placed a sealed packet beside her cup. My private review. Every page. Elara did not touch it immediately. This could end your reign. Yes. Why give it to me? Because keeping it is how I became the man who allowed this. She opened the packet. Inside were names, dates, payment routes, and a list of estates transferred to families allied with Merrick. It was the evidence she had needed for 18 years. For one careful hour, they worked side by side. No promises, no mate claim, no attempt to turn grief into intimacy. Only paper, tea, and the growing knowledge that they understood each other's loneliness too well. At dawn, Merrick demanded an emergency council session. The widow records had to be declared compromised, he argued. The burned lodge proved hostile forces were manipulating the case. The watch had to be sealed under sovereign authority. Elara entered the council chamber carrying the watch herself. Mara and 2 town constables remained outside with the ledgers. Ronan stood at the head of the black walnut table. Merrick faced him from the opposite end. Your Majesty, Merrick said, if these materials are released now, 3 houses will withdraw military support before nightfall. Ronan looked toward Elara. For one moment, she believed he would choose differently. Then he extended his hand. Mrs. Venn, place the watch on the table. Her body went cold. You agreed it would remain in my custody. I am ordering it transferred under royal seal pending verification. Merrick said nothing. He did not need to. Elara looked at the man who had opened his private files to her, held a burning beam above her, and asked before touching her injured hands. Then she looked at the king. The king had returned. Do not do this, she said. Ronan's voice remained controlled. The evidence must survive what comes next. It survived 18 years without your protection. Elara, you do not have permission to use my name. His face tightened. Mrs. Venn, give me the watch. No. 2 royal guards stepped forward. Oriel rose beside the wall, but Ronan gave him a silent command to remain. The wolf obeyed. Elara felt that obedience like a door closing. Ronan came around the table himself. He did not take the watch from her hand. He waited until she placed it on the wood. She did so because guards were watching, because resistance would allow Merrick to call her unstable, and because dignity sometimes meant choosing where to lose. Ronan closed the evidence box. He pressed the royal seal into black wax. The authenticity of the watch and all connected documents is unresolved, he announced. The public hearing is suspended pending internal review. There it was. The same language. Unresolved. Suspended. Internal review. 18 years collapsed into 3 phrases. Elara removed the examiner's badge from her coat. She set it beside the sealed box. I resign from the royal investigation. Ronan's control faltered. You cannot protect the widows without access. Watch me. She turned toward the door. Behind her, Merrick finally breathed with relief. Ronan spoke once more. Elara, wait. She did not. By noon, Elara had turned the town memorial hall into a claims office. The building had once hosted winter dances and veterans' dinners. Now its long oak tables were covered with pension letters, property deeds, tax notices, and family photographs brought by women who had spent years being told their losses were administrative mistakes. Mara stood at the front doors, recording every document that entered. No royal clerk touched anything. Elara worked without her examiner's badge. She no longer needed the crown's permission to recognize a pattern. The first proof came from a widow named June Halley. Her farmhouse had been declared abandoned 17 years earlier, yet the Crown Preservation Council had paid for roof repairs, stable feed, and heating oil every year since. The payments went to a company owned by Merrick Vale's nephew. The second estate showed the same pattern. Then the third. By late afternoon, 11 families had produced tax records showing that council allies had lived on properties officially described as empty. Elara pinned copies to the memorial wall beneath the names of the displaced owners. The system became visible, one page at a time. Mara placed a cup of soup beside her. "You have not eaten." "I will. You said that 2 hours ago." Elara looked toward the hall entrance. Auriel stood there alone. Snow had gathered along his back. No handler accompanied him. No royal guard waited outside. The white wolf crossed the floor between the widows and lay down beside Elara's evidence table. Mara whispered, "He left the palace." Elara did not reach for him. Auriel rested his head on his paws, facing the doors as though guarding the hall from the throne he had abandoned. The women noticed. Some bowed their heads. Others simply moved their papers closer to him. Elara returned to the transfer records. She did not know whether Ronan had sent Auriel or failed to stop him. Either possibility carried meaning. Neither restored the watch. Near sunset, one of the town constables brought a sealed envelope. "No royal mark," he said. A man left it at the north entrance and walked away. Elara examined the paper before opening it. The seal belonged to no office. Inside was a copy of the order transferring her childhood home into council ownership. At the bottom, in Merrick's handwriting, were 4 words. "Widow remains professionally disruptive." She read the phrase twice. Not grieving, not mistaken, disruptive. They had known exactly what she was. Mara read over her shoulder. "They did not dismiss you because they thought you were wrong. No, they dismissed you because they knew you would continue." Elara folded the order carefully. "That makes it evidence." Auriel lifted his head. The hall doors opened. Ronan entered without guards. He wore a dark wool coat with no ceremonial chain. Snow clung to his shoulders. In one hand, he carried the sealed evidence box. In the other, he carried a thick packet bound with plain string. Several widows rose. No one bowed. Ronan stopped just inside the doorway. "I am not here as presiding king." June Halley's voice came from the nearest table. "You still are one." "Yes." The answer was quiet. For the moment, Elara remained behind her evidence table. "You have the watch." Ronan placed the sealed box on the floor between them rather than on her table. "I do." "You violated our agreement." "Yes." "You publicly damaged the case." "Yes." "And you gave Merrick time to move." "Yes." The widows listened. Ronan did not look away from Elara. She waited for the explanation that powerful men always offered after using power against someone weaker. It was necessary. There was no other choice. "I was protecting you." He said none of those things. "I believed I could control the timing without repeating the harm," he said. "I was wrong." "Why did you do it?" Merrick threatened to activate 3 succession challenges before the evidence could be secured. "I thought sealing the watch would keep him in the chamber while I copied the council records and moved the witnesses." "You could have told me." "Yes." "You chose not to." "Yes." "Because you did not trust me?" Ronan's gaze dropped to the sealed box. "Because I trusted my authority more." That answer hurt because it was true. Elara came around the table. "Open it." Ronan broke the black wax with his thumb. He removed the pocket watch and held it out on his palm. Elara took it. The chain was cold. She checked the hinge, hidden plate, engravings, and blood seal before signing a fresh custody note. Ronan watched without interrupting. Only after Mara witnessed the return did Elara look at the packet in his other hand. "What is that?" "The report I sealed 12 years ago." The hall grew quieter. Ronan placed it on the table. "My private review confirmed that the council had exceeded the decree. It identified 9 unlawful transfers, 4 falsified death declarations, and 2 disappearances connected to council officers." Mara's face hardened. "You knew." "I knew enough to act." "But you did not," Elara said. "No." "Why?" Ronan looked toward Auriel. "The wolf did not rise. My mother died during a succession riot when I was 19. A forged letter divided the royal houses. Merrick taught me that a ruler who exposed weakness invited bloodshed. When this report reached me, the Southern Pacts were threatening to break the treaty. 3 houses named in the review controlled half the border guard. So you buried it? I limited new transfers. I removed 2 officials. I ordered supervision. Elara touched the packet. And left the system in place. Yes. How many women lost their homes after you knew? 8 confirmed. Possibly more. The number moved through the hall like cold air. 8 winters. 8 kitchens emptied. 8 women told to wait while a king protected stability. Ronan opened his coat and removed a folded legal document. I signed this before coming here. Elara did not take it. What is it? A waiver of sovereign immunity concerning every action connected to the decree, the review, and the seizure of evidence yesterday. June Halley gave a bitter laugh. A king can revoke his own waiver, not after the chief civilian magistrate records it. Has she? She has. Ronan placed the document beside the report. Elara read the signatures. The waiver was valid. Still, she did not forgive him. A legal surrender was not the same as moral courage, not yet. The assembly reconvenes at dawn, he said. Merrick believes the evidence remains sealed. Does he know you returned the watch? No. Does he know you copied the council accounts? No. You are asking us to trust another plan. I am asking you to present your case. I will answer it. Elara looked around the hall. The widows had spent years having decisions made over their heads. She would not repeat that because Ronan had arrived with the right document. She addressed them. The hearing belongs to all of you. We can present tomorrow, or we can demand an independent venue and wait. Mara spoke first. He used delay against us for 18 years. I do not want to give him another day. June nodded. One by one, the others agreed. Elara turned back to Ronan. We attend on our terms. Name them. The doors remain open. The town recorder creates the official transcript. The watch stays with me. The widows sit on the main floor, not in the gallery. Merrick may answer, but he does not control procedure. Agreed. And Oral enters with us. Ronan looked at the wolf. Orel's pale eyes remained on Elara. If he chooses to. He already has. At dawn, the Winter Claims Assembly filled beyond capacity. Citizens stood along the side walls. Military veterans occupied the rear benches. The 27 claimants and family representatives sat at the center tables with their records arranged in numbered bundles. Elara entered carrying Thomas's watch. Orel walked beside her. Ronan was already near the throne. Merrick stood at the council table wearing dark green, his hands resting on a stack of prepared statements. He appeared calm until he saw the wolf beside Elara. Then one finger moved against the paper. Elara noticed. The town recorder called the hearing to order. Merrick rose immediately. These proceedings have been contaminated by stolen records, an unsupervised fire scene, and testimony gathered by a former royal examiner acting outside her authority. Elara remained seated until he finished. Then she stood. I did not steal the records. I found them where the original witnesses hid them. The fire was started by someone wearing your council thread and carrying your family seal. Every document gathered afterward came voluntarily from the people whose estates your office declared abandoned. Merrick lifted one hand. A family seal can be taken. Yes, that is why it is supporting evidence, not the center of the case. She placed the original temporary trust decree on the evidence stand. Then the altered annex. Then Thomas's ledger. Then the maintenance payments. Then Ronan's suppressed review. She explained each item in plain language. No speeches. No fantasy law. Only dates, fibers, signatures, payments, and names. Merrick interrupted when she reached Thomas's confession. Your own husband designed the system you now condemn. Yes, Elara said. Several widows turned toward her. She opened Thomas's final statement. He helped design it. He ignored early warnings. 3 women were displaced before he acted. He lied to me. He wrote that himself. Merrick had expected denial. The absence of it left him with nothing to attack. Elara continued. Thomas also copied the altered records, preserved the original trust language, and died before he could release them. His later courage does not erase his earlier failure. His earlier failure does not make your theft lawful. Mara placed her military nursing record beside the ledger and described receiving the watch from Thomas before his arrest. The chain of custody was complete. At last, Elara opened the hidden plate. The blood seal caught the morning light. Merrick turned toward Ronan. "Your Majesty, the claimant is displaying a sovereign instrument without authorization." Ronan's voice carried across the chamber. "She has authorization as its lawful owner and evidence custodian. You ordered it sealed." "I did." "Then enforce your own command." Ronan looked at Aurel. The old instinct passed between them. King to wolf. Command to obedience. Aurel rose. For one terrible second, Elara thought he would return to the throne. Instead, he walked toward the evidence table. A royal guard reached for the watch. Aurel showed his teeth. The guard stopped. The wolf took the chain gently between his jaws. Merrick stepped back. "Aurel." Ronan's command was clear. The wolf did not obey. He crossed the open floor, placed the watch in Elara's hand, and lowered himself beside her. Not a bow, a choice. His broad body turned away from the throne. The court understood. Ronan lowered his raised hand. Elara closed her fingers around the watch. "What does the blood seal prove?" the recorder asked. Ronan stepped down from the dais. "It proves the hidden plate was created under my authority. It proves the original decree was mine." Merrick spoke quickly. "It proves nothing about the altered annex." "No," Elara said. "The ink, fibers, payment records, and your clerk's testimony prove that." The detained junior clerk was brought forward. He did not confess to the entire scheme. He did not need to. He confirmed that Merrick ordered him to remove the copied claim list and destroy the lodge records if they were found. Merrick's composure finally broke. "You speak of homes as though the realm had not been at war. Those estates funded grain, soldiers, roads. The widows were protected from chaos." June Halley stood. "You protected my roof for your nephew while I rented one room above a butcher's shop." Another widow raised a pension notice. "You declared me dead, then taxed my land." Merrick turned to Ronan. "You signed the decree. You preserved the council. If I am guilty, then the throne is guilty." Ronan came to stand beside the evidence table. "Yes." Merrick stared at him. Ronan faced the assembly. "I signed the emergency decree. I permitted authority without sufficient review. 12 years ago, I received proof that the council had exceeded its limits. I sealed that proof because I feared political fracture more than I valued the lives already being fractured." No one moved. "I told myself I was protecting the realm. I was protecting my reign." Elara watched him take the crown from the black cushion beside the throne. It was silver, old and severe. Ronan did not lay it at her feet. That would have made his accountability look like a gift to one woman. He placed it on the public evidence table. This crown cannot judge the system it protected. He signed the abdication order before the town recorder. Then the dissolution of the Crown Preservation Council. Then the transfer of all widow claims to an independent civilian court. Finally, he signed over his private northern estate and investment holdings to the restitution fund. Merrick whispered, "You will destroy your family." Ronan set down the pen. "No, I am ending what we called preservation while families were destroyed for us." The guards took Merrick into civilian custody. No blade was drawn. No blood was needed. The evidence had done what violence could not. 6 months later, Elara opened the Independent Widows' Claims Court in a restored civic building near the lake. The first hearing returned June Halley's farmhouse. The second restored Mara Holt's legal identity and pension. By winter's end, all 27 claims had been reopened. Living widows received property or compensation. The names of those who had died waiting were carved into a wall of pale stone in the entrance hall. Thomas's name appeared in the archive record exactly as Elara had presented it. Designer, witness, participant, whistleblower, no false innocence, no erased courage. Elara served as the court's elected chief examiner. Her office overlooked the lake, not the palace. Every document had 2 civilian custodians. Every emergency order expired unless publicly renewed. Ronan lived in a small house outside town. He testified in 12 hearings, traced hidden assets, and accepted every ruling without privilege. He never asked Elara to forgive him. One quiet evening after the final hearing of the day, he stood outside the court doors with Arel beside him. He did not enter. Elara finished locking the archive and saw him through the glass. He held no royal seal, only a folder of recovered pension records and 2 cups of tea. She opened the door. "The court is closed." "I know. You could have left the folder with Mara." "I could have." Aurella walked past her and settled beside the memorial wall. Ronan remained outside. Elara looked at the second cup. "Is that for me?" "If you choose it." Months earlier, he would have entered, arranged the room, and called it protection. Now he waited in the cold. Elara took the cup. "I have forgiven you," she said. He did not smile. He understood the weight of what came next. "That does not mean we return to what might have been." "I know. It means I no longer need anger to guard the door." Ronan nodded. "And the door?" She looked toward Oral, resting beneath the names of the women whose truth had outlived the crown. Then she stepped aside. "The door is open for tea. Nothing more, nothing less." They sat on the courthouse steps while evening settled over the frozen lake. Ronan did not speak about fate. Elara did not promise him a future. They spoke about the next pension hearing, the roof June wanted repaired before spring, and whether Oral had grown too old to pretend he disliked bread. It was an ordinary conversation. That was what made it precious. Love later in life is not proven by how quickly someone crosses a room. It is proven by whether they keep showing up after the applause ends, after power is gone, and after forgiveness has been offered without a guarantee of return. Ronan's sacrifice did not restore 18 lost years. It did not make his silence harmless. It gave him the chance to spend the years ahead repairing what he could. Elara's forgiveness did not surrender her independence. It allowed her to choose what came next, without fear making the choice for her. Do you believe Ronan gave up enough to deserve a second chance? Or would you have kept that door closed? And if stories about mature love, hard truth, and earned redemption matter to you, you are warmly invited to subscribe and join us again.